Hello and welcome to the Thinking Cap Solutions podcast. We talk everything content, audience engagement and leadership. My name is Corey Kay. Very nice to have my partner in crime here again, Mickey Ma.
Great to hear your voice, Corey Kay.
This one is for anyone who has a job which might be shaping ideas with other people, whether you're coaching, managing, creating, selling or leading. It's about reading the room, guiding different personalities and making creative better without bulldozing the people behind it.
You know, in most industries now, you are working in a collaborative environment. And so this is valuable insights and real life execution stuff that you can put in play, no matter what your role is within a creative team.
Chemistry is key. And this goes for any relationship, whether you're in a marriage, whether you're in a friendship, and particularly when you're in a creative environment. If the chemistry and the vibe is not right, really unravels a creative process. As you know, I was asked by one of our clients who's in real estate to sit in on a listing that they were videoing. We've got a videographer, we've got a real estate agent. The real estate agent is doing their piece to camera and the videographer is giving direction and guidance. And technically everything was fine. But from a relationship point of view, my observation with the videographer was there was no collaboration, no sense of we're doing this together. And I ended up having a catch up with the real estate agent and just straight at us, so how do you find working with the videographer? They said, he was pretty difficult when I first started, but I'm used to him. And that really struck me, Mickey, because I'm used to him is not a partnership. That's a tolerance.
It's not a high praise comment, is it?
No. And tolerance has a shelf life because when you want a creative environment and you want to work with people, there has to be collaboration.
What did you see that sort of caught you off guard really quickly? What was the kind of that immediate thing that you saw that was like, hang on a minute, there's a piece of the puzzle missing here?
Two things, doggy commands, not seeking to understand. Now, the real estate agent, that's their listing. They know that house. They've been in and out of that house because they would have done a presentation. They're very familiar with it. They would have also written up a script for it to go up on real estate and domain.com.au. The videographer is seeing this house for the first time. There was no conversation or dialogue. Which do you think is the money shot in the house? Where should we start? Where should we work through? You're missing an opportunity because they know the house better than you. They're also paying you. It doesn't set the framework for what we want, which is that collaborative approach.
And while it's scary, it's actually not an uncommon thing that we've been exposed to post our media careers, Corey, in our now Thinking Cap Solutions world, where I guess we do live in a world where quite often there is parts of businesses and brands that is outsourced. I guess in particular now that we live in a world where most companies are needing to create some types of content, that some of that can be outsourced, and in particular in the real estate world, a lot of that is done with third parties, bringing it in people to create social media content or the videos for and the likes. So it's not uncommon that we see that. But so on one side, I can see it going, okay, well, the real estate agents brought in the videographer because that's their area of expertise. So you'd expect them to be able to back themselves and know what's going to make great video. But you raise a valid point there, but equally, the real estate agent's the expert in their area and they also know how to sell houses. So their opinion is super critical in the piece as well. So yeah, I hear what you're saying, and it's absolutely not uncommon. We see that quite a bit where it's just, okay, well, I'm the expert, so I'll tell you how it needs to be. And it seems to be a lost art, the critical piece, which is the relationship building.
Today's conversation isn't about that one interaction. This is much bigger, and it's how we can work with those different types of people when the stakes are high, and in particular, when time is short. In our media careers, we had the luxury of, if we were building out teams in a creative environment, we could get in front of whiteboards and it could be a longer form process, but that is not how the world works in a lot of industries right now. With contractors, freelancers, sometimes you're having to build the relationship in the creative environment in a matter of minutes. This episode will tailor it and try and work it towards building that environment in a very quick manner. And we need to start with the personality types. We've built these, Mickey, and we've tried to keep it really simple and keep it only 3 personality types when you're in a creative environment. Because if you've got that knowledge and that background, you can start to adjust your style. So the 3 are the willing learner, the quiet resistor, and the confident controller. Let's just start with let's just go through piece by piece. Talk us through the willing learner.
Will follow instructions, whatever you tell them to do. Typically, they'll do it even without consideration for perhaps the reason why. eager to please and to do, but not necessarily the context why, which then can create the lack of confidence.
Thinking of my media career, Mickey, this is very early on in the piece. I had a radio show and I had 2 willing learners. Mate, it felt fantastic at the time, I've got to tell you, because like you said, they are a sponge. How much easier is it just to go into a meeting and go, okay, do this, and off they go? Very easy to leave the collaborative piece out when you have someone who has that personality type. Okay, let's talk quiet resistor.
Well, typically they'll reluctantly agree. Typically their body language will give away that there's something perhaps that they're not quite sure about the idea. They may not verbalize it. More often than not, they won't necessarily immediately, maybe not until after the fact when it failed, and they'll go, I knew it would fail, or it succeeds, and they might go, oh, I'm actually surprised by that. I kind of see them as at times that the glass half empty. That is some example. Sometimes they're analytical. So sometimes it's just simply that they're a deeper thinker. So, and naturally with an analytical, because I am one, you would typically go to where could this go wrong? What could happen here? So sometimes that's where their mindset goes. Other times there's other influences and other factors that come into play to why they're a bit of a resistor to this. So, I'm certain you, in fact, I know for a fact that you've worked with many people like this.
Yeah, worked with a lot of athletes. One in particular, an AFL player that I work with, would go through the ideation process, get into the creative energy, and they would nod, execute, pull it off, and then say later after the concept, I really didn't think that was going to work. Now, that is not collaboration. That's silent friction. They gave me the energy to think that the idea was really good leading into it. I think with this personality, at times there's either an introversion or maybe they don't want to be accountable, because the minute they speak up and steer an idea in a certain direction, all of a sudden becomes their idea. Or it may come back to me, Mickey, at that time, the guide and the boss. Maybe my energy didn't give them the room to speak up, and you need to be very careful and mindful around how you present yourself. Am I opening up with, like you say, questions and conversations which can get what I need out of them?
Let's bring the questions out so we can try and get an establishment of where they are at with this idea. Are they generally all on board? If there's concerns, what are the concerns? Now, sometimes they will then open up to you. Sometimes they won't. So sometimes what they don't say or how the body language squirms a little bit more will just give you an insight. Okay, I know what I'm dealing with here.
I love our third personality type. This was my favorite to work with. I actually think it's the most challenging. They are the peacock. They are the confident controller. Usually, and Mickey, I'll get you to talk us through it, but I find that they're highly intelligent, highly motivated, and high ego.
Strong opinions. They prefer to do the leading. They can come off as dismissive of external input, no matter what role you might play in that. They're not always right. So there is a process and a role that you can play in that. If they're right on point, so, you know, they are a high performer and they actually do really get it, your role there is to really let them run with it and support them and keep that energy up. In the instance where maybe they think they know it and they've run with it and it's not quite right, you might need to approach it slightly different. And that will require is, hey, can I offer up an alternative option of what we could do here? Because I reckon you're the person who can deliver it for me, but I reckon what if we did it this way? So it's the words we as opposed to I think we've got it wrong or I don't think you're right, because you'll just get their back up. So it's gently bringing it back without becoming a headbutt situation, because that could be how it goes. Because I also see, you know, the confident controller is quite often is very, to your point, high ego, but sometimes it's purely high performer. Sometimes it's a combination of the both. If it's simply high performer, that typically, and we've dealt with a lot in particular with former athletes that are high performers. So they're used to direct feedback, so they'll take it on really well. Sometimes those high ego people, they think it's their way or the highway and they're always right and anyone else's opinion is wrong. So the approach is different here. So this is a unique one to because you don't know, am I dealing with ego or am I actually simply just dealing with a high performer?
So if you have to get out of the way, somewhat that's made easier for you, but you're dead right. When you've got a creative environment with the confident controller and perhaps they don't really know much about what's going on but don't want to look to be wrong and they want to look to be in control. This is when we get into the dark arts, and there'll be a separate episode on its own, but the ability to make a confident controller feel like it's their idea when it's not. And it's interesting you said we. I think I say you a lot with a confident controller. It's always about you, because if I'm saying you, then they're the ones who are making the calls. They're the ones making the decisions. Do you think we should do you like this? Do you make it all about them? And then I think you potentially might get a good result out of them. But they're an exciting person to work with, Mickey, and usually in terms of the execution and the product at the end of it, your best work.
Hopefully, as you're listening, you're nodding your head, and likely because you've experienced any or probably all of those three types of people within the environment you're at. So that's kind of how we sort of label them, dare I say it, and some traits and some thoughts. Well, I guess, Corey, let's go back to the example that you experienced here is time again. What would you, and if you're in the opportunity where in this instance, you were simply there as a genuine observer, but if you were an active player on that team in some way, shape or form, irrespective of the role, what would you have expected, or how would you have approached that?
Rapport building at the start, because the real estate agent is quite a humble one, softly spoken, absolutely knows what they're on about. And I think if you identify that personality type, warm them up, make them feel engaged. You're going to get to high instruction. He might have been right with majority of what he was saying, but not to be inclusive with a very experienced person on the other side and not to get their thoughts and opinions, it just didn't make any sense to me. They've been in and out of it and probably been thinking about it and obsessing on it for 2 or 3 weeks while they're trying to get the listing. So I don't understand why you wouldn't engage with them.
That's a great point on how you'd handle that. And I think that's absolutely true to anyone in this situation, Corey. Let it be you got 5 minutes with them, 50 minutes with them, or whatever it is. Take the time to build some kind of rapport. Get to know them as a human being as best you can in the shortest amount of time. That'll give you a bit of a pulse check on the type of personality you're dealing with. Understand that you're both there to achieve a united outcome. You're not there to dictate and flex your muscles and your area of expertise only, because you actually need both parties to bring their best to achieve the most common outcome. In the instance, for the example that we keep referring back to here, it's the real estate, the person who knows how to sell houses and someone who knows how to do video. How do we bring that great knowledge together and get the desired outcome? The risk otherwise is the videographer thinks he knows it all and does it his way. Now, as you say, he might actually be kind of right there. But at no stage did he give the real estate agent the opportunity to have their say.
And the mistake he's made is, while I'm getting paid to be the expert, what you're forgetting is the person who's paying you is looking down the barrel right there. Yep. So you have the need to build that rapport. That is actually our first point. So working in a creative environment, which is before the creative starts, set the relationship right. So that's building it before you actually get started, which can really set the tone for the rest of the session that you're in. Next, it's in the moment, giving feedback without killing the vibe. So now you're in the creative process. What do we do, Mickey, when all of a sudden, whether it's we need to give a thought or maybe it's going sideways, how do we do feedback in the moment?
Again, you've got to read the room on what are you seeing. And I guess if you're dealing with a willing learner here, some of the signs might be, are they looking a bit stressed? Or perhaps are they unaware that they're becoming across overly confident but really missing the delivery of what it is that you want them to do, whatever the role is, let it be on camera, off camera, what it might be. So it might just simply be, hey, why don't we take a pause here for a minute? Let's just reset what we're trying to achieve here. And do we feel we're nailing that? Quiet resistor, probably a similar approach there. It's, hey, let's just check in. Let's just make sure we're on track here. How are we feeling right now? What's working? What's not working? When you get to the confident controller, it might be simply, let's just do stock check here. How are you feeling about this? And if you feel that they're not on the same page, they're not hearing or seeing what you're doing, boosting them up, giving their confidence up without derailing them. You're not telling them they've done wrong. You're just sort of trying to realign them to get them onto the same page to what the desired outcome is, playing to their strength, but also using your strengths to recommend what it needs to be.
That's why understanding the personality type is so important. And I'm actually going to credit the videographer. It wasn't all bad, because one thing I thought that he did really well was encourage a person who needs to know, was that good? Because even when that was fantastic, well done, you could still, was it? They needed to hear that. And I thought he did that really well. And I think that's an important part when you are in the creative process and you're having to do it on the run. Know there are certain people positive reinforcement. Even when things aren't going well, find things to make them feel like this isn't going pear-shaped, because I even know for myself, having been on the other side, if I constantly got critical feedback, I'm already beating myself up to a pulp that I don't think it's good enough. And then if I'm getting that on top of it, it progressively gets worse. And unfortunately, you can't buy confidence. In this case, the other person needs to build it.
And I wonder if, because in this instance, the videographer was giving that positive feedback midway through, that's what's kept that relationship going over 6 months.
Yeah.
What I would say is, go back to any relationship. It's that first impressions, really. Let's think about it. It's those first impressions that typically define our immediate rapport with someone and our decision making of, is this someone I want to engage with? Is this someone I want to interact with? And that's both professionally and personally. So the risk for the videographer is, okay, in this instance, he's probably done just enough to keep that relationship going. But if he does that with everyone, where he doesn't build rapport from the start, there's a risk that he will not get return business. He won't get recommended business. He is still missing a critical piece. In this instance, it's still paying off for him to a degree, but it's got that missing piece there of building that rapport, which that first step is most important, as the others follow. But if you don't get that rapport right from the start, then the risk of not getting return business or whatever is very high.
All right, let's move into, we've gone active feedback. Now it's a chance for feedback and growth. This is where you can shape the next project, or you can also ruin the relationship if you don't pick your mark right here, giving feedback, particularly with the 3 personality types. So what steps do you take when you're doing post-feedback?
Yeah, and look, this is actually another one in a time when we're outsourced stuff, where we, deem time poor, budget poor, that we can miss this step. So, that starting on building the relationship. I'm here, I've got an hour to do the job, let's just get in and get it done. So you miss that opportunity. Equally at the end, my hour's up, I'm done. Thanks very much, I've done my piece, out I go. So you're right, that how do you round that out? And the critical one there is in a timely manner. And sometimes that might be immediately after. Sometimes it might be 24 hours later, depending on what the situation is and the project that you're working on. But it's just a check-in. How do we feel that went? What worked for you? What did we nail there? If we had our chance to do it slightly different next time, what would we do differently there? Final one is asking, is there anything I could do better to help support you in this process? Because that's opening up the dialogue for constructive feedback there. And most people, or not all people at least, like opening themselves up to vulnerability of hearing feedback that they may not want to. But the reality is, it's such a critical question to ask. I've always prided myself when working with teams is having that courage to ask those questions, because I've always wanted to get better. So seeking to understand. And we do that with our clients, Corey. If you think about our process with what we do with our clients, when we onboard a client, we'll seek to understand play discovery first. When we round out our time with a client, we'll seek to understand, okay, did we, at the start you said we were trying to achieve this. Do you believe that we've nailed that with you? Is there anything we could do differently? How can we work better with you so you can help, so we can be better for next time?
Really like your last point. I think it softens the landing too when you have, and potentially you do have some critical feedback. This is a two-way street here. Feedback is an endless loop. It would be a mistake not to seek feedback on self. So I think of this videographer, if he was seeking feedback, he can then get understanding of maybe he needs work with his bedside manner and rapport and can make those adjustments. So I think it's twofold. A, you want that feedback so that you can be better, but B, it can soften the landing for some feedback that maybe you're giving your client.
Also take some accountability yourself. Like, so in this instance, if the feedback is not being sought, but you feel you've got something to offer, don't be afraid to actually offer it up. So if we want to use your example from the other day, the opportunity is there for the real estate, if they felt it, to go, hey, can I just give a bit of feedback? I didn't sort of love at the start how we didn't collaborate a little bit more on that process. So don't rely on someone else to seek out the feedback. If you've got some, then you're creating an environment that's very open and conducive to wanting to get better and to be the best. And I think that's great for everyone, because at the end of the day, we want to continue to get better. We want to deliver great results. And in particular, if you're paying for it, why wouldn't you? So don't be afraid to offer up the feedback if it's not being asked. But ideally, you should be asking for it as well.
So let's look at the 3 personality types to look out for: the willing learner, the quiet resistor, the confident controller. The process is building that rapport before the creative starts, setting that relationship up. It's so important to become aligned. Then when you're in the creative process, being very mindful, again, thinking of those 3 personality types, how you're going to give that feedback. And then the post-creative feedback, soften the landing, offer the feedback loop. It's not just about them, it's about you. It's the big C, right? Collaboration. If you can have collaboration in all 3 of those elements, it's highly likely you'll have a successful creative process.
If you want to have the conversation in greater detail, we'd love to speak to you to see how we can help you. You can reach out to us, thinkingcapsolutions.com.au, or get to us on LinkedIn, Thinking Cap Solutions, all one word.